Mark, welcome to Balance the Grind. Great to meet you. And as I just said, I do feel like that fish tank really matches well with the background that we've got going on here. Lots of color in this picture, lots of color.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
So just for our audience sake, and I don't think anyone can ever introduce themselves as well as themselves, why don't you just give us a quick sort of précis of yourself, what you're up to now, and a little bit of your background.
Yeah, my background, I mean, my chemical engineering degree is my undergrad. Most of my career I spent on rockets. I worked on a Space Shuttle program. I was the chief engineer on the solid rocket boosters. But I went from that to, if you're old enough to remember, a zip drive. I went to iOmega, and I was in charge of their internet e-commerce back when the internet was really starting, like 1998. So I got to learn a lot about e-commerce and those type of things. I still own part of a women's fashion company, right? A high-end clothing company. And I've dabbled with a whole lot of different things like DNA and other stuff. The latest thing that I'm working on is health devices, PEMF devices specifically, because it was like 23 years ago, my dog, I got arthritis in her spine really bad. And this veterinarian friend of mine said, hey, there's this lady with this magic machine that can reverse arthritis. So I kind of dove into the technology. I never got a chance to actually get my dog treated, but I dove into the technology and found, I don't believe it because it's like magic, but it's working and there's too much data that shows it's working. So, but it just made me angry that it was being held hostage in clinical environments with super expensive machines.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, there's got to be a way to make it affordable. And so I'm not an electrical engineer, but I may grant myself a degree after this journey because I've had to dive in. I had stuff catching on fire and doing all kinds of things, trying to build these devices. So they're little, it's a pocket-sized device, smaller than your cell phone that you just put in your pocket and you run the protocols. There's like 59 different ones. So that's the main thing I'm working on these days.
And just for the sake of everyone else, what does PMF stand for?
Pulse electromagnetic field. So it's kind of a fancy word. It's what it sounds like. It's a magnetic field that pulses.
Yeah.
And it's not unheard of woo-woo. The Earth does it all the time. So you're engulfed in it right now. So it's 7.83 hertz, 14.1, and 20.3, which is a pulse electromagnetic field, the Earth's heartbeat. And where it comes from is lightning echoing off the ionosphere. It makes a chamber that resonates, yes. So that's where everyone believes that it comes from. So yeah, you can take your phone in an app and just look at the background magnetic field and see it's about a half a Gauss, 0.4 to 0.5 Gauss is the Earth. So you're engulfed in it, always have been. So it's not crazy from that point of view. It's there.
Isn't that interesting? I also love the way you casually just sort of drop in you worked in rockets, space shuttle, you've dabbled with DNA. These are just easy knock around things that anyone just, got a spare weekend, has a crack at. I just love the way you sort of brush over it. So, I mean, these are pretty heavy, technical, complex matters. And I'm keen to sort of delve into you and how you've worked through these. So we mentioned before we jumped online, one of the things that Balance the Grind is about. It's about how people, not necessarily, there is the work-life balance part, but it's more about how people live their lives, whether they have daily habits, whether there's things they do, how they think, all that kind of stuff. And it's to show and highlight to everyone out there who reads the site or watches the show that there is no consistent right answer for balance or the right routine. Every single person is different. And I think everyone needs to understand that. And you can do that by highlighting how different everybody is. And we're going to do that with you today. So okay. I'd love to talk to you first. Let's go way back, right? As you said, you worked on rockets. Now, rockets, space shuttles, right? These are incredibly complex pieces of equipment. There are lives at stake. There are millions of things going on. You're going into a world that, back then, and particularly as well, was very much unknown. Give me a sort of thought process as to when you're working on a project like that, how are you taught to think? Is there a consistent way that everybody works? Is there a sort of checklist that you go through, or is everyone just throwing around crazy ideas and you're trying things?
No, usually on a manned space program, NASA, they're scared of change, right? They kind of put their head in the sand and say, they use a term called, is it within family? Meaning, did I fly this same stuff before? Yeah. And it's your head in the sand because no 2 days are ever the same, right? Tommy on mixer number 2, ate something different that day, so he's going to behave a little bit different, right? So there's always that constant change. People kind of freak out when I tell them the average shuttle had, each launch had about 22,000 defects on it.
Goodness.
So 22,000. So you have to, like, if you want to be completely safe, you're throwing all the hardware away all the time, or you have to rationally look at, is it in specification? What's the violation? Is it acceptable? And so I actually teach this, right? Because I always struggled with a journalist putting a mic in your face and going, is it safe to launch? Well, you can't go, yeah, there's 22,000 defects on it. But we said it's okay, but we've looked at them all and it's okay. So you have to say yes, right? Or no, you can't elaborate. So it's, so then you start to wonder, like, what does the word safe mean? Okay. And if you look it up in the book, in the dictionary, it's going to tell you free from risk or harm. And none of us in business, none of us in life live that way.
No.
Is it safe for you to take a breath right now? You think maybe, hope so, but maybe not. You know, you could die from it. So I came up with a definition that I could live with. Is safe means that the benefits perceived, okay, let me put that word in there because it's super critical. The perceived benefits outweigh the perceived risks. And everyone's perception is completely different. So when you're doing negotiation in business with somebody across the table, you got to try and understand ahead of time what's their perceptions of the pros and cons, because nothing is black and white, right? It's never black and white. It's never black and white when you make a decision to launch a rocket. It's a 6 million pound bomb that wants to explode and you're trying to control it, right? I mean, that's what a rocket is. So it's
terrifying way of describing it, really.
Yeah, it's we mentioned before about routine and stuff. As mine's like, I love experimentation. I mentioned, you know, I think experiments trump experience always. You always get people's opinion that might be helpful, but you don't know till you go test it. So I tell people all the time in businesses, how can you fail in 2 weeks?
You can't have tested everything, right? It's impossible to have tested every option. So how could you possibly fail?
Right. And why do most ideas fail? Because they never get started. You can come up with an excuse of it's going to cost too much money and take 8 months to do this. No, figure out how to fail in 2 weeks and just go do something in 2 weeks and see what happens. You're going to learn. There's no such thing as eureka moments. It's usually like, what the hell just happened, right? I was expecting this test to do this. One of my friends on Facebook, a colleague of mine, said on the Facebook ads, do not underestimate the bad taste of your customers. Some of the ads that I put out there, I'm embarrassed to put out because they're so awful. They end up converting more than those shiny good ones. And it's like, okay, you would never know that unless you go test it. So my routine is I'm constantly testing Google, Facebook ads, tweaking things, changing stuff, you know, stuff that I wouldn't think would working. You know, I have a spokesperson that looks real professional because all my marketing friends told me, you're too ugly. You need a good looking woman to talk about it. Well, the highest converting videos I have of me standing here explaining something with the fish behind me.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, it's not interesting. Yeah, it's not the, in fact, one of my Facebook guys, one of his clients said the highest converting video they have is a lady explaining the product, holding the baby. The baby throws up on her, basically. It's kind of like a sneeze and a puke at the same time. And she goes like this and keeps talking. And they didn't edit any of that. And that ends up being like the highest converting video that they've had. So all the polished ones didn't work, right? They didn't work near as well. So yeah, just experimentation. And probably all your listeners have heard of minimum viable product. Is what's the fastest, cheapest, easiest thing you can put out there to go test it. You know,
I'm glad we're having this conversation. I'll tell you why. We're about to launch our first TikTok campaign for Balance the Grind. We've decided it's time to get on there. And we are, luckily, I feel quite good about this because you're saying to testings. We're trying 3 different things, right? We're trying one, just like you talked about, we're trying the beautiful lady, doing it polished, making it look great. So that's going to go out. We're trying me, which I was told also, you're too old, Steve. You're 50 now. You cannot be doing this. You should not be on TikTok. We're trying me. And then we're trying another one where it's just a voiceover over some other clips. And we're launching it next week. So we'll launch all 3. We'll do it throughout the week. And I can't wait to see which one works. I really hope it's me now. Now you've said to me that that could be, but I still feel it might not be. But it's so essentially, if we talk about your routines and your ways of success, it's the constant change and the constant experimentation, which brings me to a question of how do you know when it's working and how do you know when to stop? Or do you never stop? Like if you have something that's resonating, do you just keep doing that? Or do you then try something else? And if it drops down, you go back, or then you keep iterating? How do you sort of go when in that scenario? Because you could go forever, right?
Yeah, no, I keep doing it as long as it's making money, as long as it's profitable, right? So that is the game in this business is, cost of acquisition, right? Is
Yep.
in the old days, right? You made it for $1, you wholesaled it for $2, and you retailed it for $4.
Yep.
In the internet world, if you don't have a 10x markup, you're going to lose because the advertising costs that much. The game's just completely changed. And Zuckerberg's guys, when people go, why does this thing cost so much? I go, well, the marketing's 5 times more than the cost of the product, right? So we're constantly, every day I'm looking at cost of acquisition. I had a discussion with one of my guys. He goes, well, let's change it from return on ad spend to cost of acquisition. I'm like, that's the same thing as far as math. And he goes, not in Google's eyes, it's not. The algorithm treats it differently. I'm like, you're full of crap. So he goes and he tests it, and he's right. It went down about 30% when he just changes the name in it. So it's constantly experimenting with that. But man, I do not like being at, I don't want Zuckerberg to drive my whole business, right? Because if he changes that algorithm in the morning and it now costs twice as much, I'm done because I don't have another channel yet, right? I have Google and Facebook and YouTube. I don't have distributors yet. I don't have all those other channels. I'm trying to get them, right? But it's and I shut the door so she can't hear me. So my wife, I nicknamed her.
She might watch this later. Do you understand? This is going to be on Spotify,
Right.
it's going to be on Apple, it's going to be on YouTube. You're going to have to keep her off every kind of device if you don't want her to see this.
Well, I've nicknamed her Lucy Van Pelt from the Peanuts because she thinks everything should cost a nickel, right? It's like really hard to try to what my point was there was it's like, but I can't tell her how much I'm spending a day now because she won't sleep at night on Facebook and Google ads. So I just have to say, is my bank account going? I didn't make any money last year, made a little bit of money, right? But I had to buy a bunch of inventory. But I'm in the right path this year, I think. But it's fun. I mean, it's I wish I didn't care about Facebook haters. I really wish I didn't, but they're awful people. They're just awful. I had to block 15 of them today, right? They're just mean. And they're like, you suck, you're Hitler, you're a criminal, you're stealing money from old ladies. I'm like, I have a 30-day money back guarantee. How's it a scam? And they just attack you. And you can't use rationale with them. I've experimented with that. You gives them more fuel to fight. So you just kind of go block, I'm done with you. But yeah.
Have you tried interacting and reasoning with them? Because I mean, anyone who's going to go online and write something like that doesn't sound like someone you're going to have a great conversation. It sounds like the guy outside the restaurant who had way too much to drink, who thinks you stole his umbrella. He's not easy to reason with. This just sounds like another version of that.
Yeah, I think it is. And I've tried to be, I said, okay, here's what we know about the technology. There are 35,000 published papers out there on this technology. It's a lot. And then people, when I give them that, I even wrote an article, a blog post. It's called Liar, Liar, Pants on Fire. Okay. I said, this is for all the Facebook haters. This is what I know and don't know. You can take it or leave it and see if it works for you or try it. But I haven't, specifically with PTSD, I have a 95% success rate. That shocks me, right? And I think it's actually higher than that. It's just
That's
the
massive.
people, it is massive. So it's, and that's where that's really kept me motivated. Routine, what keeps me going is the 44 suicides a day in the US. If you don't know those numbers, it's 22 military veterans, 15 first responders, 5 medical workers, and 2 active duty every day. Every day. And that's not counting all the civilians, right? That's those 4 groups I'm talking about. And what I've found with PTSD is actually the larger audience that I have is civilian women that they have a crappy boyfriend, crappy husband, or both, or crappy kids, or miscarriages, or car wrecks, or life, right? So there's all kinds of trauma out there that's really helping people with. So that keeps me going. It keeps me balancing the Facebook haters with the 25 likes I get a day, you know, or thumbs up or hearts, and helping people. I mean, if this doesn't raise the hair on your arm, you're not a human being. Okay. It's a 17-year-old girl told me, Mark, I've got no boy's ever going to ask me out on a date because I have Tourette's. Right. I'm a monster. I get picked on every day at school. She goes, I ran your brain balancing. My Tourette's disappeared and I have a date Saturday night. That was 2 years ago, and she's engaged to the guy now, and she doesn't have Tourette's anymore.
Amazing.
Don't know how that did that. Another guy last week. This was his tone of voice. Hey, Mark, my wife has dementia. She's not been able to complete a sentence for a year and a half. We ran this for 3 or 4 days, and she's now making complete sentences. She is so happy. I go, Tom, that's the most excited you could be about your wife can now talk? Or do you not want to listen to her?
Maybe he needs it too. Maybe we need to get him one as well. God knows, they might have a whole conversation. Who?
Yeah, it was like, what? I thought the guy was going to call. I thought by tone of voice, he's going to be complaining about something. And he's telling me this fantastic story. I'm like, wow, that's your energy level? So anyway, yeah, but
Well,
yeah.
I mean, there's a habit in itself. I mean, do you share those stories online? Do you put that information out there? Is that something that you do regularly? Because one habit I wish everyone would do more of, and I've recently found this new newsletter. I end up being subscribed to a lot of newsletters. I love reading information. I don't read them I just like sort of pulling in things and then sort of from all different areas and sort of picking the ones I leave. But I found this new newsletter called Positive News. I think it's out of the US actually, and it's great. And all it is positive stories, which is like the opposite of pretty much every other newsletter. And I look forward to this. Just seeing the words positive news pop up in my inbox gives me some sort of dopamine hit. And then you start reading these stories. And I've put that as a habit into my life because I found that I've stopped watching the news anywhere near as much as I do. I try and remove as much negativity from my life as I can. And then having something that actually gives me positive stuff without me having to go and seek it out it has been an incredible change in my brain chemistry, maybe. It's made me a much more positive person. So this is a habit that you should be doing. You should be pumping these positive stories out because people do want to read them. In fact, you should probably even call Positive News. You should look them up after this and see if they want to aggregate your stories into their newsletter because it comes from all over. They don't write it themselves. They sort of pull them from everywhere. And it's just called Positive News. It's fantastic. That's a habit I think more people should do. I think if people thought about and talked more about positive things, they probably find they'd have more positive things in their life.
Yeah, and I don't know that one, but I do have it's called Mice News. And you're right, that is a habit I have that every morning I get that in my inbox and I'll just read some of those articles and stuff. And I just, like the 6 o'clock news, as you said, so negative is like, I watch it once every 2 or 3 weeks because my friends are telling me I'm missing out in the world or I'm not educated or something. I'm like, but I get mad. In about the first 45 seconds of what was that story? That didn't even make sense. And then of course every commercial is a drug commercial, right? Which is just totally depressing. Every one of them is a drug commercial because they own it, right? It's awful. It's like, those commercials, like they just listed 97 side effects, anal bleeding and I was like, what was this even for again? What is it supposed to do for you?
It just makes you ill. Basically, makes them wealthy. It makes you ill. But I do think that the news thing's right. Like as we were talking about before, I've just been away for 3 weeks, and I haven't watched the news at all. And I don't tend to look at my phone too much when I'm away, particularly if I'm on holiday. Try and avoid it. And I came back and, obviously I'm in Sydney. We just had the Australian Open on. I love the tennis. So I started watching the news because I wasn't able to watch because it was working. So I want to find out what's happening. And within a few days of just watching the news, it was really making me feel like I think there was some sort of physical reaction. It's just so awful. It's just, the quality of journalism is dreadful to start with. That just puts you off. But then the stories are so awful. So there's a habit everyone should be bringing in: nice news and positive news. Get these newsletters because I think that they're just incredible in what they can do to your brain.
You said that it's like back to habits. Is I get on the Facebook haters. I don't want to even go look at them because they're so negative on the haters, but I get yelled at by all these customers, like, why aren't you answering my stuff? And I'm like, well, it's me and the fish. I'm doing the best I can. Okay. I gotta go find all these things. Email me, call me or something, right? But anyway, yeah, I have to work myself up to go into Facebook to read the comments, because I know I'm going to come across a dozen I did today of just going, don't take it personal, Mark. This guy's an idiot. Just hit block and keep moving on. And so, yeah. So now I'm gonna have to go read nice news. What's that?
Straight after, or before and after, maybe even during. I don't know. I think it's great. But I want you to leave us with something like you've had this incredible life where, you know, you've obviously got a very technical brain that has the ability to understand things like rockets and DNA and your current devices right now. In terms of how your brain works and how you think, give us something that you do to relax. How do you, because when you've got all that information flying around in your head, and I would imagine that when you're in those industries, you're constantly thinking about them, and you throw in the fact that you're an entrepreneur, which means you're constantly thinking about the business and Facebook at the same time. Is there something that you do consistently that just, you know, helps you just unwind, switch off? It could be anything.
Yeah, I'll tell you my favorite hobbies are. My favorite hobbies are flying hot air balloons and airplanes. And
that doesn't sound relaxing. That sounds highly stressful.
It's not relaxing, but you're forced to not think about business and all your business problems.
To keep yourself alive.
Yeah, when I'm flying a balloon, I got to think about flying a balloon, right? And I love it, right? And it's like, so I wish I had a good answer. I struggle meditating really hard to not get the monkey mind thing. The device has helped a lot, you know, to use brainwave theta to help enhance it. Put that in your pocket while you're trying to do that. But yeah, sometimes I'll go out in my boat and I'll just turn the motor off, right, and just sit there and watch dolphins or that kind of thing. But
that sounds very relaxing.
Yeah, we have a lot of dolphins here and manatees and stuff, so they're fun to go watch that and stuff, or watch pelicans and stuff fly, who are the best pilots in the world. If you ever watch a pelican, they're incredible, right?
They're like the equivalent of an A380, right? They're big birds. I mean, they are not small.
No, they are big birds. You don't want to get in a fight with one, because I have, right? I caught one by accident fishing once, and he had to wind him in, and he bit me, and it wasn't good.
I don't.
Yeah.
Don't imagine.
I mean, he was scared, obviously, and I was trying to get a hook out of his mouth. But anyway,
that wouldn't have been nice news.
My wife says all the time, "Can't you ever turn off?" I'm like, I'm trying, and I need to do better. But like you said something about your phone just this weekend. She goes, "Look up your phone, blah blah blah." At lunch, I go, "I didn't bring my phone today." Her eyes got this big. She goes, "You didn't bring your phone?" I'm like, no, I did it for you. I did it on purpose. So I can't answer a call when somebody's gonna call me and start, asking questions about stuff. It's like, it's just sad.
I have a different, this is an Apple Watch. I have a different watch for the weekend too, which is like a normal watch. It's not connected to anything other than my arm. And I love that too, because it doesn't vibrate. It doesn't tell me anything other than the time. And I think it's got the date on there. Not that I really care what the date is, but yeah, it's nice to switch off like that. So well done. And you got your fish tank, which I'm hoping gives you some sense of relaxation. They say they do.
Yeah, they do. I can just sit there and stare at them for a while. They're cool. Yeah.
Well, there's a good answer. Look, it's been great talking to you today. We might get you back on when your product keeps going. I'd love to have you back on in a year and see how you're going with it. It sounds like it's amazing. We might even look at getting you on our other show, give it a nudge, and sort of really go into the depths of that business, which really talks about entrepreneurship. So might come back to you on that. But thank you for coming on today and sharing some of your thoughts. What an interesting life you have had so far, and plenty more of it to come by the looks of it. So thanks for coming on. And yeah, I'll look forward to catching up with you on the other show.
All right. Take care. Thank you so much.
Cheers. So